Thank you. Well, I hope you guys can hear me all right. I'm like Roy. I don't do this every day, so forgive me. It took away a lot of my introduction there. Like I said, I got my degree from the University of California at Davis in economics, and so I'm an economist. I have a lead AP certification. By show of hands, anybody else here a lead AP? I see one. Okay, so I know my audience. I'm also a black belt in Six Sigma, which is process improvement, and then also a it's escaping my mind right now, but a design build professional. So I focus on design build project delivery. But what I really want to talk to you guys today about is a triple bottom line solution. And what triple bottom line, I heard it earlier, triple bottom line is people, planet, and profit. But I want to talk about precast as a solution for some of the things that, the questions that are being asked out there. And I want to present to you guys from the standpoint of an economist, right? And sort of what an economist would look like. We heard earlier from some of our vendors, their perspective on UHPC. We've heard from the suppliers. I want to give you a perspective from your customers. Okay, what your customers might think about UHPC and why it might be an answer. And why am I up here speaking about your customer? Well, I spent about 20 years in the general contracting arena. So working for general contractors, hospital groups. My primary focus was vertical construction. So high-rise construction, higher education, a lot of commercial types of stuff. I've done some civil, but really that's been my background. Dealing a lot with architects, engineers, general contractors and subcontractors. So that's really my niche for the last 20 years, is talking to those people, trying to deliver their dreams. If you have worked around architects at all, you will know that most architects consider themselves to be an artist. And so learning that language and learning what your customer is speaking is really important. And in my world, my customer as a general contractor is an architect. It's an engineer and it's an owner. And so those are the people that I'm regularly engaging with, and that really you guys are too at some level. They're the ones that are creating your projects. But to begin with, I kind of wanted to pose this first question, which is, doesn't appear to be. I watched this interview with a gentleman by the name of Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. And someone had asked him, hey, what do you think is going to change in the next 10 years in business? And he said, perhaps the more important question that I never get asked is what's not going to change in the next 10 years? Because I can build a business strategy on what's not going to change, but you start talking about what is, and so he said, well, what's not going to change in our business in the next 10 years? And so I want to look at UHPC through that same conversation, right? Why is it an answer to that question? What we know about our customers in the next 10 years that's not going to change is we know that they're going to always want something that's less expensive, right? We know that they're always going to want more options, more choices, and we know that they're always going to want something faster, right? Those three things are never going to change for our customers. And so if you can start looking at UHPC as a solution that's sort of saying, hey, I know those things are never going to change, this is a product line that's going to help me answer it, well, then it makes sense, right? So we're going to have that conversation about why this makes sense. I'm going to recover a couple of bases that we've already hit, but I need to do that because in order to have any run score, you got to touch every single base, right? We've already talked about UHPC as a cementitious material, and I think it's really important to draw that cementitious out of this, because it's not just about cement, but it's about all those SCMs. It's about the composite that makes this material. So it's cement versus a cementitious material. We're seeing it in the science of concrete, and if you really are a student of our industry, you are knowing what concrete hasn't changed a whole lot over a long period of time, but changes like this are significant. We saw a curve earlier, the S curve, I believe it was. Who showed the S curve? The S curve. So we're still early in that in terms of material science development and what UHP has provided us. But it is a science of concrete. And we're seeing it particularly in this country, being applied to infrastructure projects to begin with. What we believe is that anybody who engages in UHPC is going to find a competitive advantage, specifically as they're looking to participate in a sustainable, clean energy future. So it's important to hit a couple of things of what makes UHPC unique. First of all, its unique mechanical performance durability allows it to replace a lot of other materials, right? So now all of a sudden, it's not just concrete for concrete. We're not talking about UHPC for precast. We're talking about UHPC for wood, UHPC for steel. It can replace a lot of other materials. You're going to see in a lot of my slides here different pictures. This particular project is the Sheikh Zayed Bridge in Abu Dhabi. And this is a UHPC applied bridge. One of the things that's unique is you'll notice that Zaha Hadid Architects. You guys ever heard of ZHA? Anybody ever heard of ZHA? So Zaha Hadid, this was actually a woman, really famous architect, leading edge. She died in 2016. But it starts when you start looking at some of the projects that are out there, the real high-profile projects. It's architects like ZHA, Hadid, who are looking at it. And someone said earlier that design architects is these materials allow them to express their expression, their vision, right? And so you have these architects like Hadid who are just leading edge. They have this vision, and these are the materials that allow them to manifest their vision, right? And so these really super incredible structures, these are the materials that allow them to take their vision and put them into action. Some of the common qualities we've already talked about. We mentioned compressive strength versus tensile strength. Obviously, tensile strength is where we're paying attention to. The low water cement, these are all the qualities that sort of make UHPC unique. It's high resistance to freeze-thaw, the different types of fibers that you can use. All of these things sort of feed into its applications. I love this one here, is that it can be used as a field cast material, and particularly at these link slabs. And I want to just ask you guys a quick question here. When you think about this, so this is a bridge. They've got panels here. They're bringing these panels together. They're using the UHPC in this link area here. And as you guys look at that, why would they potentially use a UHPC in a linking scenario like this? Anybody know?
Better bond strength, more narrow.
You're not allowed to answer, Larry. You know the answers. Anybody have an idea? Roy?
It's flowable, so it'll get down in there since it's self-compacting, and then it's a super durable product, so you don't have to worry about it wearing out on you.
Sure.
And then a really great bond strength.
Absolutely.
High strength and durability has allowed you to compress that down from, say, 4 feet of 1-inch bar that falls down to 3 inches.
Absolutely.
Reduce a lot of material.
Absolutely. All right answers. When you think about a system, though, as well, where's the weakness in this system? Anytime you bring two things together, that's the weakness in the system, right? Any type of system, an envelope system, dissimilar materials, bringing them together, that's the weak point in the system. So now by using an UHP in your weak point, you're actually making that weak point a strength, right? If this was going to fail, oftentimes it would fail where those two elements come together, right? And they're saying, no. We want to make sure that that point of failure is reinforced. So very common in this type of application. The applications where we're seeing it, and you guys have seen this already, we talked about this, bridge construction and rehabilitation. The overlays, we saw the video from, yep. Exactly, the overlay there. This is a product coming out of Canada. The company that provides this, UHPC, Benton Provincial, theirs is being used for the refurbishment of these locks and dams. And again, the reason that they're using it is because it's resistance to the abrasion, to that environment, right? So that's an application there. We've talked about marine structures with the boat docks, why we would use it there. We saw the video from Cemex, or who were the gentlemen that had the video on the airports? You guys back there, right? Airport pavements. Again, because of that resistance, that impact. Here's where we see a huge market potential for us. Security and blast mitigation. This project here to your right is called the Zena Tower. And this is the first UHPC facade project in Beirut. Now let me ask you, why would you possibly want security blast mitigation on the side of a building in Beirut? Obvious answers, right? Hey, I still want it to look good. But if I got to take a mortar round, I want to survive, right? We're seeing a lot of potential for the blast mitigation features of UHPC in our government buildings. So we have a project right now we're doing at the Capitol where they had a blast mitigation specification, right? And it was the first time we ever had that. Really we step back and say, wait a second, what do you guys want here? And it's about the connections and all that other stuff. But there's a huge potential market there in government that we see and that we're looking to exploit. We're seeing it in industrial flooring, again, because of its resistance to a chemical attack, and then obviously in building envelopes, right? The rain screen assemblies and what have you. This picture here is the Chinese Cultural Center of Belgrade in Serbia, and this is a ductile project. Interesting fact, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, why it's been embraced so well in some other countries and why it's so lagging here in the US. In 2022, the consumption in China was fairly significant, right? They're using it for bridges, for buildings, for municipalities, but in their building applications, about half of it is being used for prefabricated components, so the girders, the columns, the trusses, what have you, and then the other half is being used for facades, rain screens and assemblies and such. So there's been this full all-in other parts of the world in terms of the use of UHPC. You saw in some of the other video presentations, the projects that they showed, they were all in China. Interesting, isn't it? But there's some really compelling reasons why an architectural precast manufacturer may want to lean into ultra-high performance, and specifically relating to the triple bottom line, in the demand for adaptable, resilient, and sustainable building materials. And I want to talk a little bit about that demand, right? What's that pent-up force behind us that's driving us to this? Because we've heard from the cement guys, hey, we're doing all this stuff to meet these goals by 2030. They're not just doing that to be good people, right? There's actually an economic engine, a force behind them that's propelling them. I heard briefly a conversation or some mention about EPDs, and I didn't see anybody really responding or acknowledging. Has anybody here yet had to produce an EPD? Other than Larry. All right, so this is some new territory, and that's probably why I didn't hear the response or didn't see any sort of feedback. But these environmental product declarations, they're like it's like on a cereal box or on any other type of food label. It's, hey, these are the ingredients and these are the impacts. There is an architectural insulated wall, EPD, as Larry pointed out, which is very generic. But more and more what we're seeing is that projects are requiring the different vendors and suppliers to be able to provide an EPD specific for their product at their project. And so if you're not yet familiar, you have not yet heard about EPDs, I assure you, they are coming. We're in Seattle, we're close to Seattle, we're in a very green lib area, and so there's a lot of support for these types of measures. Almost all of the batch concrete suppliers in the Puget Sound areas all have EPDs for their delivered concrete. They have to. It's a requirement. And we're now even seeing it. We had an architect reach out to us, asked us a generic question. Hey, are you able to help us achieve our low carbon concrete requirements for this project? Right? So our marketplace is already seeing the demand for this, and that'll be one of the things that we'll pursue in the next year with Northwest Precast, is creating an EPD for our precast products, very specific to us. US cities with carbon neutral reduction goals. Again, I see Orlando, Florida up there. I see Texas, Houston, Texas. These are all cities that have made a commitment to do low carbon concrete, right? And to reach a net zero. And so this list continues to grow, but it kind of shows you sort of the pressure and who's participating and where the ask is coming from. And so UHPC is, again, just one of the materials that's sort of going to fit into this profile of how are we answering the questions that are being asked here. As climate change intensifies, hey, there's a lot of compelling reasons why UHPC becomes a solution for us and why you need to be able to say, hey, I got an idea. Reduce the carbon footprint. Again, not to beat the horse there, but there's some differences in how UHPC is produced. One of the big challenges we have is, again, that cement, how to deal with that cement. And so one of the things that we're looking at Northwest Precast is moving to a low carbon cement. So yeah, we know we've got more cement in a UHPC mixture, but now we can do an offset with a low carbon cement. So there's an opportunity for you to reduce the carbon footprint in using UHPC. Material efficiency, again, we've already talked about that. Lower CO2 emissions. And I want to hit on this one because this is sort of the next step, right? There is about, you can create an environmentally friendly, resilient product, but can you be an environmentally resilient, friendly company? Meaning, can you conduct yourself and your operations in the same sort of meaningful way? Can you reduce the amount of emissions that you're creating? And so UHPC in some ways allows you to say, hey, you know what? I can actually reduce the amount of energy that I'm using to produce my product. One of the unique things that we have at Northwest Precast is our energy source. If you look at the Puget Sound area, the majority of the energy that's supplied comes from hydroelectric, which is a renewable energy source. The second leading source is wind, right? So those are our two leading supply energy sources here in this area, which gives us an enormous advantage in terms of looking at energy credits when we're trying to promote our product, right? Looking even further down the road, when we built our plant, we said, hey, what if we were to add photovoltaic here? What if we were to add, photo cell panels on the roof of our building? Could we automate some of our systems? So we have the potential to expand our capacity and add PV to us, which takes us completely off the grid. And again, trying to live to the standard that we're talking about is another step. And again, I just talked about the energy savings. Global warming potential is where it's really at, and you guys are going to hear this over and over again. As your customers are talking about what is the value of this product, or what is the value of UHPC, or what are the decisions that I'm trying to make, this global warming potential is going to come more and more into the equation. And so as a precast manufacturer, we have the unique opportunity to sort of position ourselves as being a solution. And I want to talk a little bit about that. So as many advantages as we have, there are obviously still some limitations. And it's important that you understand what those are. And as well, why there's been a differentiation in terms of the adaptation, who's accepted it, why it hasn't been embraced in other places. Early adoption. So where this has really started and where it's got the most foothold, in Europe to begin with. A lot of sort of joint development and research, countries like France, Germany, Netherlands, they've spent a lot of resources doing the research into these materials. And Dan and I had an interesting conversation on the phone. We were saying, well, why? Why would in some countries they have this incentive to invest in these types of materials for sustainability and not in our country? Again, Europe, huge infrastructure projects, pedestrian bridge, widespread girders, towers. They have written recommendations. We saw those earlier from Larry's presentation from different countries. And so there's the support, right? They've got standards to build to. But I think more significantly is sort of the integration of government, industry, and construction. In these countries in Europe where there's more socialist structure, right? There's more collaboration, there's more integration of those resources. Same thing in China. When you look at why it's taken off in China, it's because you have those enterprises working together, right? You have government working with education, working with industry to create products. So, and as well, they have very ambitious goals. And their ambitious goals are based on, hey, we want to build things, incredible structures that are iconic, right? We want to build fast, right? We want to build things that last for a long time. And I think that's something that's unique to other parts of the world that maybe we as Americans don't embrace as well. Again, China, government support, policies and funding. So again, a unified front in terms of developing materials and the application of those materials. Here in the United States, again, there's a lag of awareness. Here, we're not as studied, we're not as invested in research. I think the biggest thing is there's not as much collaboration between industry, and government, and education. And so all of those enterprises are sort of working separately. But there's really been a lag of awareness and understanding. The bigger thing, I think, is the traditional mindset. As dynamic and frontier as we like to believe we are, in reality, we're very rigid in our mindset when it comes to the built environment, right? And I think a lot of it's because of risk, because of litigation. Nobody wants to go off the rails. Nobody wants to take a risk unless I know that it's been completely vetted. And so we're really hesitant and afraid of change in a lot of ways when it comes to design in our country. Regulatory hurdles, again, unless you have standards that are well-defined and well-developed, you're just not going to get people to buy into it. And then obviously cost considerations. We've talked a little bit about costs and some of the cost drivers. I think the cost component can go a lot of different ways. And sort of moving forward, what needs to happen is there needs to be more collaboration between academia, industry, and government. I mean, really, that's where it happens. When all those sort of wheels are working together, that's where we're able to implement really effective push-forward types of change. And then the guidance, right? We need to be able to guide that direction forward and be able to say, hey, look, there are good examples out there of work that's previously been done, standards that have already been written. We don't need to recreate the wheel. We need to trust and embrace this. And then moving forward, demonstrating projects, showcasing high UHPC high-profile projects. You'll notice that all of the high-profile projects that we've shown on almost all of the presentations this weekend, are all in other countries. Right? I know, I went looking for examples of incredible UHPC projects in the US, and I'm like, I can't find them, right? But then you've got stuff like the Turning Torso in Malmö, Sweden. Where the hell is Malmö, right? But look at that damn thing, and it's all UHPC, right? And so until we have projects that are high profile, that people can really say, wow, look at that, it's not gonna get as much traction. Interesting fact, and again, this is kind of piggybacked on what Larry was talking about earlier. We have a cement plant just up the road from us, or up the way near Vancouver, and this is Lafarge, and they're doing the same thing as Larry, right? They're capturing their CO2 from all of their thing, and they're basically creating a low carbon cement. And so for us, in the market of trying to figure out, well, how do we reduce our footprint? Well, we're looking at our suppliers and saying, hey, the materials we need to get need to incorporate this. But these are the changes that are being incorporated across the board for all of our cement suppliers, right? And again, they've stepped up and sort of acknowledged the fact that, hey, there's a pressure, there's an ask of us to reduce this, and so we better lean into it as opposed to fight it, right? And so that's what's happening in the cement industry. So why you might hesitate to produce UHPC, right? Because there's a lot of good reasons why you might not want to do this. Cost considerations. It can be more expensive, specialized materials and production processes. Again, I don't want to get too deep into the woods in terms of the cost of a proprietary blend versus a non-proprietary, because you're right, there's a lot of sunk costs that go into the research and development and all that. But I know it was really important to us that in order for us to make it profitable for us in the future, we had to invest in developing a non-proprietary mix. We have to be able to understand it, we have to be able to test it, and in time be able to use it to our own. I think as more and more of that happens, we're going to see the price come down. Here's the advantage that all of you guys have that maybe we didn't have, is you have us, right? We just spent 2 years doing some hard-ass research, and it's continuing. And so anybody in this room who steps up and says, hey, you know what? We're getting on board. What can you share? You've got an open book, right? You've got a 2-year, 3-year head start. You've got everything that we've learned and everything that we've got at your disposal. So your learning curve and your cost to get there is significantly less. Now, yeah, you still got to have equipment. You still got to have the other stuff. But some of that knowledge gap, again, that's the benefit of being here. Complexity of learning curve, right? There are some things that you got to learn how to do different. And in our world, we're very rigid thinkers. And so getting to people who can think outside the box and relearn how to do things, it's important. Lack of established standards, again, we've already talked about that. Until there are clearly defined standards and how things are to be used, it's kind of a crapshoot. I love the PCI manual. I hope you guys picked that up because I think that's a wonderful starting point, right? It's great that these things start in structural. It's great that these products are vetted and tested in those applications because they're really serious about testing it, right? There's lives at stake. And so they're putting it through the test. I'd much rather have these products come through and be tested on a structural and arrive to us that way, as opposed to us coming up with this incredible, beautiful thing and trying to promote it and try to get it structurally vetted. So it's coming to us in the right way, in my opinion. Risk of performance uncertainty. Again, if you're familiar with UHPC, it's been around for about 30 years. That's kind of the number that I'm hearing, right? It hasn't been here for 100 years. We're talking about performance of a product to last for 100 years, but nobody can point at a piece of 100-year-old UHPC yet, right? And so until there's enough of this out there for 50 years, something, there's still always going to be a question mark of, are you sure? And then market demand and acceptance, right? If there's not a lot of familiarity to it, where's the demand going to come from, right? I like to sort of equate it to the iPhone, right? Nobody knew that they wanted an iPhone before there was an iPhone. But the moment there was an iPhone, damn, everybody had to have an iPhone, right? Sometimes the question is there and it's just the answer's not always clear. By now you guys should see the question is clearly there, right? The standards are there, the expectation for change is there, the question of how we're going to get there is there. You know, the bed is made for somebody to answer, and here's how. Production logistics, again, hey, there's some different ways with UHPC you got to be able to look at. I can't just do business as usual, right? It's going to require some change in how I do things. And so if you're not an organization that's adaptable, that's able to change, you're really going to struggle with embracing something like UHPC. Material sourcing and supply chain, again, in any product, getting your materials where you're going to get them is vitally important to the overall cost. And I think probably the biggest thing is educating stakeholders, right? Is educating our architects, engineers, and clients about UHPC benefits. I think this one is really important in terms of I want to talk about when you have that conversation, right? Because as we're out there and we're trying to educate our customers about our product, the difficulty is in a design bid build environment where you've now got the set of drawings and you're looking at it, it's almost too late, right? It's almost too late to make a suggestion. It's really hard to come in with a really progressive VE suggestion in a design bid build environment because the design's vetted, it's out there, we're looking for the low number, and showing up then and saying, hey, I got this great new product I want to educate you on, you're going to find a lot of resistance, right? And so when I said earlier, hey, I'm a design build professional, what that means is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to engage our customers when they've got an idea, right? In a design build project delivery or early on in schematic conceptual designs. That's when I want to be having the conversation. Hey, let me tell you about something, right? We heard earlier someone was talking about the value, right? Delivering value. A big part for us is not just showing up and saying, hey, look at this incredible product I got, you got to buy it, right? Delivering value in a lean mindset is establishing what is value according to the owner, right? What's valuable to because I may think resilience is valuable to me, but he doesn't give a crap, right? And so the first part when you're talking about a design build delivery or getting early in the conversation is, hey, what's important to you, right? And let me craft a solution that's important to you, understanding the value that the owner wants. But having that conversation early is really where your efficacy is going to be able to be, right? And so we're trying to position ourselves early in the conversation with our design professionals and making sure that we can kind of lead them. But most importantly, asking them the questions. What are your problems, right? And do I have a solution? Sometimes UHPC is going to be the solution. Sometimes it's not. But the most important thing is that we're listening and we're offering solutions, and this is one of the tools in our toolkit. Another interesting fact, this is a company called Blue Planet down in Los Gatos. And so they're making these small pebbles, basically synthetic aggregate, right? And these pebbles themselves are carbon negative. And so there's this, I put this up there because as you start thinking about, hey man, if I wanted to play with a mixed design and I was trying to come up with something that was like really low carbon or representing, there's a lot of different pathways to get there other than just reducing the cement or using a low carbon cement. There's artificial synthetic aggregates, recycled aggregates, etc. But this is one of the interesting companies that's out there that's promoting a new product to say, hey, I can help you get there. So transitioning, great opportunities, some of the challenges. Again, we talked about the higher initial cost. UHPC materials can be more expensive. Manufacturer's resistance due to the initial investment. Lack of contractor experience. I think this is a unique place too because what I see is the labor, the people that are handling this product, it can change, right? We like to provide a turnkey solution to our customers, meaning we'll do supply and install. And it's a challenge when you look at precast install, at least the stuff that we do. Some of that material is 40,000 pounds, 50,000 pounds, right? It's not iron workers, it's not masons, it's a very special, unique type of person that can handle the precast that we install. Well, now with UHPC, all of a sudden you've got thinner sections, different profiles, different tooling. It really opens up the installation to a lot of different types of players, whether they be framers, drywallers, whomever. But this new material is going to require new tools, right? You can't do the typical, connections. Maybe we're using more of these suction cup types equipment. We see a lot of this in storefront. But a new type of setup to be able to handle these materials and potentially a new labor force. For us, it's a coup because now I'm not relying on just this small bandwidth of people. Now all of a sudden, it's a new labor force that suddenly has potential to use this product. Some limited design provisions. Again, there's not a whole lot out here in the US, so we become the educators. And I think that's what's really important about an event like this, is hopefully you guys are walking away from this event going, man, I feel like I know a whole lot more about this product that I could have an intelligent conversation with my customer about it, right? Because until you feel comfortable enough with the information that you have, you're not going to have a conversation with your customer about it, right? You really need to go out there, do the research, make sure that you understand, what is this? Am I comfortable having a conversation about this before you can go out and promote it? There's some challenge. We talked already. Roy talked about the challenges with some of the gator or the elephant skin, and so learning how to handle that material, the shrinkages, the workability challenges. Again, it's different than our normal precast and SEC muds. I mentioned earlier durability, uncertainty. Again, there's still a lot of question marks about, hey, is this really going to be here in 50, 100 years? But I tell you, the rest of the world is assuming that it is, right? The places that are fundamentally focused on hey, I want to build something that lasts forever, they're all using it. The US, maybe we don't yet always think like that, and maybe that's not the answer. Maybe UHPC isn't about, hey, it'll last forever, but maybe the answer is, hey, it'll take a shotgun round at 3 feet, or it'll take a mortar round, or whatever it is, right? There's always a selling point according to what your value or what your owner values. And so just understanding all the potentials of this product, and what is the answer point? What are you trying to answer? Environmental considerations, and again, I think this one is still sort of the gray area. There's some school that says, hey, UHPC is going to save you, there's less. And again, the equation is quite complex when you look at all the various different inputs. But understanding the environmental impact of using a UHP product, whether it's the materials or the production of it, is an important consideration. And then quality control and consistency. Again, probably the hardest part is maintaining that consistent quality control. I think it's sometimes lost on people, and one of my concerns for you guys when you were looking at that tour and you were walking around Northwest Precast, it's really easy to sort of get fixated on the bells and the whistles, right? All the physical things that you can see. Sometimes what you don't see and what you don't appreciate is the enormous capital investment that goes into the people and making sure that you have quality control systems and processes in place. And if you don't have those, it's all for naught, right? You can have a great facility, but if you don't have invested in the people and develop those quality control processes and systems, it's a waste. UHPC, again, creates new types of bonding and connection details. That's something that's always a challenge for us, now having to look at it, and particularly when you start talking about blast resistance. And then the handling and transportation. It's a new type of assembly. We're used to using some large material, you throw it on dunnage, you strap it down. Hey, some of this stuff it's completely configured differently. The sizes, the weights, everything. And so how you handle it, how you put it on a truck, all of those things change. And then again, educating stakeholders, right? How do you get somebody to buy into a product like this? How do you get them educated? And again, when you have the conversation, as important as what the conversation is, right? You can be super informed and have all of your facts, but if you're coming late to the game, it's a moot point, right? It's about getting there early to the conversation and say, hey, what are the problems? What are the solutions? What are the guidelines? What are the standards you're trying to comply with? What are your goals? All right, I think I understand. I think I have a product. I think I have a solution. Let's talk about this, right? Interesting fact. This is a company that I've followed for a little bit. Maybe you guys have heard about it. It's called Carbon Cure. We've talked about carbon capture, right, which is one source where they're capturing the carbon from the production. This is an organization that takes the carbon, they buy it, right? You can buy this system, and what it does is you purchase captured carbon, and it injects it into your wet mix, right? And that carbon is captured, it's retained, but as you were talking earlier, that carbon affects and has the effect on the carbonation, actually affects the strength, and so improves the strength of the concrete. So what they're promoting is, hey, we'll take captured carbon, you can inject it and sequester it and hold it in your concrete, and now you've sunk it, right? And so there's potential carbon capture credits. So when you start thinking about this and say, hey, wait a second, what if I was really, really crazy and wanted to say I could create a net zero precast concrete? First place I'd start is I'd start looking at, hey, what's Larry got for a low carbon cement? Then I'm looking at my SCMs and I'm saying, okay, what have I got there? Then I'm looking at any of these types of aggregates. Hey, is there a possibility for me to use a recycled or a synthetic aggregate? And then, hey, let's top that off. Let me shoot some captured carbon into that concrete, sequester it, and all of a sudden, man, my equation, I'm a negative. I'm offsetting somebody else, right? It's not that far out of your thinking when you start going, hey, wait a second, I could do that. I could do that. That's not a heavy lift for any of us. So over the next 10 years, what we see at Northwest Precast, right there, what we see at Northwest Precast is a need to strategically plan and invest our future. And where do we see that going? We see it in sustainable materials and practices like UHPC, recycled aggregates, low carbon cement. We see it in digitized and automation. Obviously, we're heavy into BIM modeling. We've converted all of our design people into Revit. But automated production lines, this is this is from Sika. This is their 3D concrete printer. So 3D printing, I don't know that we'll get into 3D printing, but concrete printing is one of the things that we see potentially a market for. Carbon neutral technologies, again, we've already talked about the carbon neutral cement, the capture of carbon, innovative formworks and molds. Energy efficient curing and drying methods. Again, a huge part of our project at Northwest Precast is we looked at how do we want to be energy efficient in our facility and how did we want to be more efficient in our curing. And so that was at that radiant floor. And then collaboration and research. Obviously, there has to be this more partnership between universities, research, industry, really to drive this forward. Leadership development. I got to tell you that your organization is not going to go anywhere if it doesn't have the leaders there to promote it, right? And great ideas, they start at the very top. If you don't have and you're not investing in your people to carry this forward, it's not going to happen. And if you're not a culture of change, an organization that can adapt, you'll really struggle. But it's important that you develop your leaders and that you continue to have market intelligence and understand the trends. I'm a person who I can't stop reading. I'm always researching, always trying to understand what's going on. If you don't have somebody in your organization that's doing the same, you're missing out. You're not connecting the dots. You're not seeing all the tea leaves, all the signs that are out there, because the signs are very clear. I hope I laid them out for you, the things that are influencing this change. And when you start seeing that, it becomes kind of a no-brainer. You got to go, you know what? I either got to get on board this and be proactive and address this, or I get caught behind this. And the cost of me recovering when I'm behind this is going to be exponential. If I'm playing catch up and trying to figure out how to implement this after the fact, after my competitor already has, I'm dead, right? And so these are the areas that we as an organization over the next 10 years are really going to be focusing on and make sure that we're right where we need to be. And sustainability certifications and awards. I'm going to encourage you to go out there, get the projects, right? Make sure you promote them. Get people who are certified in the appropriate areas, right? My LEED AP certification allows me to have a conversation with any architect that's genuine and legit. I know exactly what they're speaking about, right? If you don't have somebody on your team who can't talk to those people in their language, you're missing the boat. So make sure you got the people with the skills. Make sure you're showcasing your projects. Ultimately, we believe that UHPC it's a tool for your toolbox. But more importantly, you got to be able to understand what's the demand, what's the ask, how do I have that conversation, and does it fit? But we genuinely believe that the groups that embrace this, that understand it, that can practice it, that can apply it, that can educate and share, those are the ones that are going to be at the leading edge, and those are the ones who are really going to be driving change. And I think that's what our mission at Northwest Precast is, in our little world, to be recognized as the leader, someone who's an expert in that, someone who provides solutions to our customers, whether it's UHPC or anything else. And so this is just one of those tools that we like that we're excited to add. So I hope there was something there for you guys. I know I hit a lot of stuff that was sort of repetitious. I hope it gave you sort of a feel of where we feel like the market is driving us, where we're investing our resources, and why we think it's important for you guys to be thinking the same. So I appreciate you guys' time, and thank you.
it.